We all rely on farmers and ranchers, but farming is riskier than other businesses out there. Crop insurance helps farmers manage their risk. With crop insurance, farmers put skin in the game by paying premiums and shouldering deductibles. That keeps taxpayers from having to pick up the whole bill every time disaster strikes. Today, about 90% of U.S. farmland is insured, providing $100 billion in protection to more than 130 different kinds of crops. It's a testament to the program's success.
Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse Senior Editor Phil Brasher, discussing the week that was, agriculturally speaking, in Washington, D.C. And in Washington, D.C. this week, or perhaps just outside of it, in Arlington, Virginia, there is, I should say, another round of negotiations for the North American Free Trade Agreement update between Canada, Mexico, and the United States. This is the fourth round of talks between the countries, and from what we've been hearing, Phil, it sounds like things are going to get a little bit more hashed out, specifically with some agriculturally related policy issues at this particular round of negotiations.
Yeah. Well, they're certainly getting a little more, little dicier with the Trump administration pursuing some proposals that Canada and Mexico really don't like. One of them is some anti-dumping provisions that tomato growers in Florida, some other produce growers in the Southeast are looking for to give them a leg up on competition from Mexico and primarily. And this is something that's got a number of other producers and commodity groups in the country alarmed because they're afraid of retaliation. But this was put out there at the last round, expected to be discussed this week. The talks are going to go through this weekend out in Arlington.
And important to note that Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was in Washington this week, spoke to a number of U.S. dignitaries, including some members of the House Ways and Means Committee, as well as President Donald Trump. And some reporting from Agri-Pulse's Bill Thompson kind of unearthed that one of the things that Trudeau talked about with the Ways and Means Committee was specifically Canada's dairy policy.
Right, and he's sort of made the point. It sounds like fairly clearly, and a point that they've been making all along, is that they are not budging on their dairy policy. They've given no indication that they would, and this has to do with this new restriction on Class 7 milk, which is ultra-filtered milk particularly from the Wisconsin, New York State. They more or less shut that out. It's a market that's lost. It's been a big thorn in the side for the U.S. industry. But Canada so far showing no sign of budging. We'll see, but no sign of progress on that, certainly.
Mm-hmm. And the Prime Minister and the President having a brief, kind of smile and handshake in front of the cameras at the White House earlier this week. President Trump again mentioning withdrawal from NAFTA is a real possibility from the perspective of the United States. So stay tuned for more coverage from the NAFTA talks. We'll be sure to have an update in the upcoming Agri-Pulse newsletter to let you know what came out of those talks with a little bit more information than we have right now. They're expected to go throughout the weekend and early into next week. I want to also mention some developments at the Department of Agriculture. Some folks on the move, both literally and figuratively over there, as we had the installation earlier this week of Steve Censky and Ted McKinney to their Senate-confirmed positions of Deputy Secretary and Trade Undersecretary, respectively, over there. They have tripled the size of the political appointees over at the Department of Agriculture, as moved from just Sonny Perdue, the Secretary over there, to, as we mentioned, Deputy Secretary now Censky and Trade Undersecretary McKinney. And Phil, with that, the department is continuing to grow under the Trump administration. I think there was a quip from a lawmaker that they thought it was going to be shrinking, but the opposite is happening at the moment. But not only that, we're also seeing Perdue go to London this week on an international exchange trip.
Yeah, he did. He's going to be gone for about a week. G7 meetings. He'll be in London, as well as also going to be down in Rome for World Food Day on Monday. So to be there about a week, it's the timing is rather nice because he finally has somebody, Steve Censky, a deputy secretary, to run the department while he's gone. The secretary has traveled a lot. He wants to stay on the road. He loves to stay on the road and be out there. He spent yesterday in New York City, actually, visiting yesterday being Wednesday. We're taping on Thursday. Visiting some FFA projects in Brooklyn and around, at least around the New York City area. So he's on the road. He's the face of, very much the face of U.S. agriculture and USDA. And as we say, it doesn't hurt that he now has Steve Sinski here in D.C. to run the day-to-day operations at the department.
So Deputy Secretary Sinski was on the job for about, I think, 12 hours, and he got thrown the keys to the car. So we'll keep an eye on how he's doing with it here until Secretary Perdue gets back. But Phil mentioned the fact that the Secretary was in New York. I want to close this week with something that happened earlier this week in New York. The House Agriculture Committee having another Farm Bill listening session earlier this week in New York. Phil, you were watching the live stream of this, and primarily talks were surrounding the dairy industry in that state, specifically the Margin Protection Program.
Yeah, they have witnessed that. Farmer after farmer came to the way these listening sessions are run. They're like town halls. Each person gets a couple of minutes to say their piece. The members hardly talk at all, except to just open and close. The chairman, Mike Conaway. But farmer after farmer pretty much lost count, coming up and telling the committee members that the margin protection program doesn't work. Now, they weren't all on the same page in terms of what the alternative should be and how MPP should be changed. But definitely a lot of concern, no surprise in upstate New York with the current dairy policy. Also, we heard a lot about research, ag research, the importance of spending on ag research, and also food stamps, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and the importance of that in the cities as well as the rural areas.
So the House Agriculture Committee leaving that state with a little bit more of a refined to-do list in terms of what the dairy producers in that state are looking for, but still with no more specifics on how they can pay for such a change and such a development in the next farm bill.
Yeah, paying for it is the huge question, as you know, Spencer, because they have so many demands. And I encourage you to, if you haven't looked at the Agri-Pulse newsletter this week yet, check it out. We have a story going through all of the different key proposals, and there are billions of dollars worth of them that the committees are sorted through right now as they get ready to write the next farm bill.
So a lot of things to keep in mind there as the Capitol Hill on a bit of a staggered recess here these 2 weeks. The Senate not in town this week, but the House is, and now next week the Senate is in town, but the House isn't. And so we'll be sure to keep an eye on whichever respective chamber happens to be in Washington this week, whether it's one of them or both of them. We'll do our due diligence to bring you all the news and agricultural policy coverage that you've come to expect from Agri-Pulse Communications. But I think that's going to do it for this week. So for Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.